Welcome to the Action Shooting Show. Uh, Tonight we have Tiger, we have Mark, we have myself, and this podcast is sponsored by Primer & Co. It's also, I am sponsored by Code Evolution and Rubber City Armory. Do you guys have anything to share? You guys sponsors anything?
No, not
No.
really.
Okay. Want to get that out. I always forget to do that, and I kind of want to get that done ahead of time. I think we'll talk about some of the sponsors for the match we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, later.
So we'll talk about all that. But the this episode is going to be an after action report on the 2022 Zombie Run for Your Life Zombie Run and Gun. We did a kind of prequel of it, a pre-interview on the match, and now the whole thing's been over for a couple weeks, and we're gonna kind of do an after action on that. So to start it off, this is a team match. It is a 10K ish. The main match is there's a 5K 22 match as well, or was. So Tiger, this is your match, so why don't you explain the kind of match flavor that you're going for? Because I like what you do with it, and you have a very specific goal in mind, which is kind of underrepresented in the match kind of landscape right now.
Yeah. So I kind of, followed a trend for the first couple of years, trying to kind of make it a little bit harder. And then I realized that that's not the match I wanted to run. I wanted to run something that first time shooters would be welcome at. I wanted to be a little bit, maybe a lot of people have called zombies silly, like it's a silly match. But let me tell you something else. It's a lot of fun, right? Like we have a good time. Like I didn't talk to anybody the whole time I was there that was like, man, this, and it like the night before the match, Friday night, right? Windstorm like crazy. Like I go down Saturday morning, I get down to the registration table at 4:30 in the morning. There's three guys literally sleeping in tents that have collapsed on top of them, and it's just pouring down rain. And they come to the registration table and they're like, dude, last night was awesome. And I was like, y'all are insane. But I really tried this year to build a match that was fun to be at and really kind of went back to the roots of what a run and gun is. I got rid of a lot of the strongman stuff, the obstacles, the crazy mental games that some of the matches are playing. If you were in good shape and a good sound, fundamental all around shooter, you were going to do well at Zombie. And being a team match, that's another thing. It is a team match. I did kind of push a little bit towards communication this year, and I liked the way that it turned out. So that's probably going to be a direction that I go. Is hey, you need to be able to talk to your partner while you're shooting, or even in between stages, right? Like, hey, how are we going to attack the next stage? Hey, here's what we got going on. So that's kind of the flavor that I'm going for. Is something that's a little bit more basic but not easy. So simple yet challenging, and just really fun. Like I really just want people to come out and have a good time. And I may not be the biggest or the best match in the world, but I can at least try to have the most fun at it. So
Yeah, and I don't want to say like the things you described. I like matches that are really hard shooting or they got some physical stuff or whatever. I mean, I think we all do enjoy that. But as Ty was saying, there's a lot of that going on in different matches, and there's not a lot of just like good fundamental shooting and here's the course and just kind of attack it. So Mark, you shot the match with your wife. I know you guys kind of trained up for this, and that was a lot of the fun. I guess we should add that's a lot of the fun of a team match like this. Mark was able to train with his wife. They got some extra practice together. They probably learned some skills, some communication. Do you say that Tiger kind of nailed what he was going for?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, wasn't like crazy throw kettleballs 50 yards or climb over a stupid wall that was greased up the night before. There was none of that silly things that some match directors do. But no, joking aside, because Tiger is one of those people that will put a greased up wall in front of you. Um, yeah, it's just a kind of the pure what we started on, really. If you go back to Matt's first Kentucky run and gun, it was you got 10K or 5K and you're going to shoot. And, there was a little bit of obstacles, I guess, in his first one. But yeah, it's kind of going back to what we got excited about when this started, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, and just from my reading on kind of some of the early Texas or Oklahoma, a lot of the early running guns over there, the terrain was the challenge, and it was just a shooting challenge. Go to these areas. So I think that kind of falls in with where run and gun maybe started at some of its roots. Which there's nothing wrong with the change, but it is kind of nice
Right.
to have some matches that do that.
You kind of
So
need both. I feel like we need to have both. So
yeah, I would agree. I like I said, I really enjoy like Heartbreak has strongman stuff. It's got their big obstacle course, and I do enjoy that. Legion, there's no obstacles. There's a little bit of the, as Mark says, strongman, but it's nothing real crazy. But they do kind of have the mind games there, and they do kind of have some extra challenges like that. So things that make you think and stay on your toes. So I think that's those are well represented. And here we have one that's just show up with your gear. If you're a good shooter and you got decent fitness, you'll do well. So that's a good kind of a good match to have. So division. So we said there's only one distance, which was 10K. You had a team match. It was all just teams, and you had Jack and Jill, which meant at least one female on the team, correct?
yep.
And you had just your regular open division. So it could be two guys, it could be, whatever. And then you had something new this year, unprepared, which it sounds like that went pretty well.
Yep.
One person carries a rifle, one person carries a pistol, and you show up to a stage, and you're assuming every stage is going to have some stage gun, which may be really well suited for that stage, or maybe not well suited. You don't really know how much ammo you have. So is that about sound like it? You want to explain maybe a little bit more about how that went?
Yeah. So my numbers this year for unprepared were lower than they were a couple years ago for what I call my special division. I always have open Jack and Jill, which I want to talk about Jack and Jill for a second. Um, Whenever I went from a single match to a team match in 2020, I really wanted to encourage the female shooter showing up, right? Like, because we all know that there's great female shooters out there. In the run and gun world, we have the Melanie Trumbles, the Jessica Smileys, the Haley Beans, the all that. And in three gun, you've got dozens of them, right? But any given match, there might be 10, there might be 15. In the run and gun world, you might get 5 or 6. I really wanted to push that. This year, I had 21 females signed up, 19 show up. That's, as far as I know, as many females have ever showed up to any run and gun ever. And I'm very proud of that. So I'm hoping to keep pushing that. Mark, Kayla can attest. Hopefully, you guys can bring some more couples. I love watching husband wife teams compete. It's awesome. But the special division, the unprepared, like I said, it was a little bit lower than the solo runs from a couple years ago. But the people who shot it, they were like, "Man, that was great," because they got to shoot some stuff that they normally wouldn't get to shoot. Right, like the one couple that I know that shot it. He was like, "Dude, I've never shot any of the guns that we, except for like the one gun was a Glock. Like I had one stage gun that was a Glock." He was like, "Everything else was brand new to me, and it was awesome." And he was like, "I'm so thankful that I got to experience that." So I felt like it went really well. I probably won't have it again because ammo is really expensive. I spent a pretty large amount on stage gun ammo. Uh, but it was a good experiment. It was a lot of fun. I got to get some guns out of my safe and let some people play with them a little bit. And Mark, you didn't run unprepared, did you?
Mm-mm. No, I want people to know that this makes very little sense to anyone that knows Tiger what he's saying now, because he usually buys the goofiest guns that you can find in like the back of a pawn shop. And so when people say they had fun shooting his guns, you're like, ooh, who had fun with those? Like, what did he bring out? And so he did put out some fairly normal things this year, the RPR, I think he did his best to get things that he knew people could shoot. But in general, if you know Tiger.
To be fair, though, one of my PRS buddies, he told me that he loves being friends with me in the gun community because I have all the guns he wants to play with, but doesn't want to spend money buying. Right, like the Maxim 9. He's like, I would never buy that. He was like, but I'm glad you did.
Did you put out the Bullpup AK?
I did not. I was going to,
Oh,
but I got talked out of it on the notion that we may have a left-handed shooter.
Yeah, and you don't want to smash brass into someone's teeth. That seems reasonable.
Well, it ain't even brass because that's a reciprocating charging handle. The charging handle will hit you in the teeth.
Yeah,
it's no bueno for a left-handed guy.
Yeah. I guess I did. There has to be a reason that Bullpup AKs just aren't running around every street corner. I guess it must be.
That's it. Yeah, it's all the left-handers' fault. But yeah,
I mean, to be fair, if the nuns didn't beat the left-handed out of them, the charging handle would.
That's right. I actually, I had to shoot it. I shot one of Matt's matches with it one time, and he had that X drill, that fucking X drill that he loves, and I hate it. I hate the X drill with a passion. And I was like, dude, how am I supposed to shoot this thing? He goes, I don't know, figure it out. You're the one that wants to run weird stuff. So I literally had to, I turned it 90 degrees and was on top of the thing and trying to figure out how to see through the sights because it's an iron sighted. It was bad. I DNF'd the stage, but I had a lot of fun with it.
There you go. So all right, so I guess we'll say the next thing we usually do is gear used. Mark, you want to talk about what you guys used or anything gear wise you considered?
So basic 16-inch AR-15 with the Razor 1-6 for my wife's rifle, and then I carried my Ruger American Hunter, which is a 6.5 bolt action, I think 22-inch barrel with the Magpul stock. And then I have a Gen 1 Razor 5-20 on that. And then both guns were using my hand loads. And then we both carried Glocks with RMRs on there. And so fairly basic setup. But, one thing that these sort of matches, we talked about this in the pre-show, but there's intel that's put out ahead of time on this. If you follow the Instagram, if you follow the Facebook groups, you know things about the match. And so I knew going into this, we were going to have long range shooting. And so I purposely carried a 6.5 Creedmoor bolt action gun, expecting to shoot a long distance. And I trained for that. And so that's one of the reasons that I chose that gear. It wasn't just, oh, I love this bolt action, I really wanted to get out there with it. The thing weighs like 12 pounds. I would prefer not to carry it 6 miles if I could. But it was, match intel said you're going to shoot long range. And really more than just the long range is the wind. Bucking the wind on some of that stuff is a bigger problem than the range. Range is just math. Wind is all the voodoo that you have to figure out on the fly. And so, but nothing really fancy, not a custom bolt action and not a super special AR-15. So most, $700 bolt action and AR-15, and then a couple Glocks with red dots on them. So pretty standard kit.
And I think as we talk about things later, that choice of having a round that bucked the wind paid off for you at least one stage. So because I know you had a pretty good day, and he's talking about he wants to take bolt action. Um, there's some great advantages to bolt actions, but in run and gun, there is rarely a time where a bolt action is a better choice than a semi-auto. I mean, I know there's bolt action guys who are like, well, I can run. I've seen some guys really good at bolt actions run a gun really quick, and the same amount of skilled riflemen with the AR-15 or AR-10 or whatever, they're going to run a stage faster. So it's nice to have matches as well that kind of give you an excuse to bring out those bolt guns and make it a doable, usable gun for that particular stage and that match. Because there's not, I can't think of any other match I shot this year, and I saw some guys using bolt guns, but I didn't see anyone run anything that was anywhere near as fast as even a mediocre shooter with a semi-auto. So I guess, do we want to go in just kind of go stage by stage, Tiger, and kind of start? Okay. I'm gonna lean on you guys here because I didn't get a chance to shoot it this year. I think I said that before in our other episode, that just wasn't in the cards for us. So yeah, Tiger, I guess start with stage one.
So stage one ended up being harder than I had originally intended it to be. The DNF rate wasn't anything crazy. Like it wasn't a super hard stage. It was a basic advance stage, right? Like you had a pistol shooter that the first target for the pistol shooter was a 2/3 IPSC at 65 yards. They had to hit it twice. The rifle shooter had to hit like a 10-inch square target at about 125 yards. And then they move up, and I got a couple of tree huggers from Innovative Targets, one of my sponsors this year. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's your standard popper, only it bolts to a tree instead of being on the ground. It was a really cool target presentation. I really liked it. We'll get Mark's thoughts on it here in a minute. Pistol shooter hits one of those at about 12 yards. A couple of times. Rifle shooter has like a 6-inch circle at about 100 now. Hits that. Move forward. Same tree hugger, same circle. This time the tree hugger's at like 15. The circle's at like 85. Cool. You move forward a third time to a fourth shooting position. 2 hits on the same IPSC, only now it's at like 30 yards. And then another hit on the square that's at like 75. It was a pretty straightforward, easy to like figure out stage. I talked to my ROs afterwards. Of the people who DNF'd it, most of them never made it past the first pistol target. Like if they couldn't connect on that 65-yard hit, or the rifle shooter struggled on the second rifle target, that 6-inch plate. They said they'd just be dancing all around it at 100 yards, But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun stage. And like I said, I didn't think it was I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it ended up being. I didn't intend on that to be a 65-yard pistol shot to start with. That's just kind of where we ended up being able to drive a T-post, because for those of you who don't know, Lucas Oil is built on a rock mountain, and you can't drive a T-post out there without running into a rock. So go ahead, Mark, take it away. I'm going to plug my laptop in real quick.
Yeah, I thought so. You say it was straightforward, and I agree that on paper and you describing it as straightforward. But I remember standing there, and they're like, "You shoot that pistol target first." I'm like, "What pistol target?" And they're like, "That pistol target," and it's way out there. I'm like, "Where?" I'm not seeing what you guys are talking about, and they're like, "Right out there." And I was like, "It's 65 yards? That way out there?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay." And my wife, I think, was tracking, but I'm like, what are we talking about? That way out there? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And then you couldn't see all the rifle targets from the start. And so I'm always going to game it, and I always want to know everything. So I want to, like square, square, circle, circles. Like I want it all in my head running before they hit the beep. And they're like, "You'll see it when you get up there. Don't worry about it." And so I get up there and I'm shooting the rifle and she's shooting the pistol. I'm like, "Square?" And they're like, "No, the same circle again." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah." And we shot fine. We didn't win any awards on that one for sure, but it was like Tiger said, it was more difficult than you would have thought it would be. But not because any one part was super difficult. It just kind of, like, I can't say that, oh, my wife's pistol, she couldn't hit that 65. She did fine on the pistol. I did fine on the rifle, but neither of us did super fast. So it is what it is on that one.
I'll also say the circles were also innovative targets. They're what he calls his I think it's a cletus setup. So it's two T posts and with a spinner in between. And I wasn't sure that they were going to work for that because I thought, well, they're going to end up getting caught on the back or somebody's going to smoke the pipe or something. And let me tell you something, they worked like a charm. I can't say enough good about the way those targets were presented, the way they worked on that stage. Like, I didn't have a single down target all weekend, and thumbs up for that because that's a big deal at a match.
One thing though
Yeah.
about that stage, kind of before we even got to that stage, no offense to the people that were running the start, but they said, "Oh yeah, first stage is about 2/3 of a mile, half mile, 2/3. You'll see it up there." And so we walked for about a half mile, and there's a cut that goes to the right. And looking at Tiger's kind of GPS, the map he put out, I kind of thought it would be either up in that cut or right off it. It wasn't. We walked down the draw. There's a little down spot. Wasn't down in that draw. And we're like, God, this feels a lot like 2/3 of a mile, getting towards 3/4 of a mile. And we considered going back and going down the cut to see if we're like, if I go back, then you got to come, like. So we weren't sure, and it ended up being like more like a mile or a little more than a mile.
It's right at a mile. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we almost backtracked, and then we would have done an extra little, half mile in there because of that. But I remember just walking, and we finally saw people walking through the woods, and we're like, all right, if they're coming back this way, we got to keep going forward. And so that'll happen. That's a typical thing.
Yeah.
Run into.
So I've shot those tree huggers before. I think maybe the first match they were used at, I don't know for sure, but the Great Lakes in so 2021 had them. And the interesting thing about them is that because they're hanging from a tree and the way that they hang, the presentation's just different enough that it's really easy to overlook, or like visually it's just not what you're used to seeing. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it. And 3-gun, I saw, and because I RO'd that weekend, I saw a lot of people pass them up because normally everything's on the ground. So just by kind of sticking this up on a natural thing, it's just already there. It does kind of throw you off. And I've shot the Cletus as well. We use them a lot in shotgun. They can get, pistol does kind of destroy the pipes and some of that over time. But now, did it have to spin over, or did just wiggling it count?
It was a rifle target. If you hit it, it was going to spin.
Oh, okay. So you shot with rifle. Yeah, I've not done it with rifle. I've done it with pistol and shotgun. And for those that don't, so most people would think of a spinner as like the two, you got a heavy plate in the bottom and a slightly bigger one on top, and you got to hit it multiple times and get it to spin, all that. Well, these are, they don't hang down that far. And the way it's designed, and I think originally Bruce Davidson and Jack Kennedy I think Jack built them, and it was kind of I don't know whose idea it was originally. I first shot him at a Bruce match, but and then Jason makes them and sells them now. But the way it's designed, if you get a good square hit in the center of that thing, it just goes right over. But with pistol and shotgun, at least, if you don't get a square hit, it'll wiggle, but it doesn't go over. So it's really neat. Auto resetting target that that you're sure it hits. It's not like hitting something and you like, well, you got to call it because of the ring of the steel or something. Like, when you hit it, it'll go over, and you know it, and if you don't get a solid hit, it's not going over, and you're kind of out of luck. So yeah, that's Innovative Targets, Jason a G. He makes some really cool quality targets. So definitely take a look at them if you need something. I particularly like those tree huggers and the Cletus, because in my match I try to use as much no reset steel, which is why Tiger's using them, because that's what you need for running gun. You can't have people out there resetting like a 3-gun or USPSA match.
Right.
So all right, now we'll go on. We're going on to stage 2 will be your next stop on this match.
Stage 2. Oh boy. This one also turned out to be harder than I expected, and the DNF rate reflected that. Boy, was I not expecting it to be what it was. So to give the stage brief, you started about, I'd say about 15 yards, Mark, back from like the stage area, 10 to 15. The shooter 1 is what we'll call him, ran across the shooting area and to this like little quote unquote house we had built out of 3-gun barricade walls. And there was a dueling tree there. And the dueling tree was at 8 yards, and they had to flip all 6 paddles of the dueling tree, and you had to flip them. So we were using crate tactical targets. Crate provided all the steel for this stage. Again, didn't have a single problem all weekend. But, a dueling tree naturally leans forward a little bit, right? That's how they get it to stay down. Well, where the trees were standing was on a little bit of a hill, so it was actually leaning forward quite a bit. So to flip them, you had to hit it on the outer like third of the target. Otherwise, it wouldn't flip all the way over. And if it didn't flip all the way over, it didn't count as a hit. So shooter 1 has to clear those 6. They go inside the house, clear another dueling tree, pick up a piece of paper that had the some intel printed on it, back out, and then they had to clear the first dueling tree again, strong hand only, because they're holding on to this intel, right? So 3 dueling trees. While they're doing that, shooter 2 has to move 3 objects, or well, it was 3 trips. It was 4 objects, but you could do it in 3 trips. It was like a 35-pound sandbag, a Pelican case with about 40 pounds worth of steel in it, and then 2 50 cal ammo cans with or a 50 cal and 2 30s or something like that with steel in them and gravel. So
this
overall,
sounds like strongman stuff.
Well,
this sounds like Mark's strongman stuff.
So you had to move those about 10 yards to the back of a Humvee. So it was just kind of a shuttle run with weights, right? I did it in 2 trips. You could, if you were really good at it, if you kind of knew how to set shit up to do it. Most people took 3. I saw one team take 4. And then the rifle shooter 2, climbs up into the gunner turret of a Humvee and waits for shooter 1. And then out at somewhere between 75 and 110 yards are 2 sets of the crate tactical, what he calls his suit cards. So there were 2 spades, 2 clubs, 2 hearts, 2 diamonds, 2 plain circles that were actually all driven into the ground. The mounts all drive straight into the ground, so they stand about that tall off the ground. And then I had 2 2/3 IPSC in the trees behind it. And your pistol shooter says, okay, engage left side club along the wood line. Rifle shooter, 2 hits, 1, 2. Right side spade, right side wood line, 1, 2, 1 hit or 2 hit. However, and there were 2 different sets of intel, so you couldn't just like listen to the team before you because you weren't going to get the same intel. Actually, what we did was we just inverted it just to make it easy on ourselves. But the key to this stage, Yeah, just like Maverick. I was inverted. The key to this stage, and me and John ran it 4 or 5 different times, 4 or 5 different ways, and I watched a bunch of people run it, and he RO'd it, so he watched everybody run it. You had to shoot the pistol in less than 60 seconds. Like he said, there were teams that would shoot the pistol in like 63 and they would time out, with one target left. Like that was the key. You had to have 2 minutes to shoot the rifle portion because you're telling them one target at a time. Hey, you have to hit this before I can tell you the next thing. Knowing that in the future, that stage would get dumbed down to probably 1 or 2 dueling trees and probably half as many rifle targets. I had a lot of fun shooting it. Like I thought it was a blast to shoot. And of course, shooting out of the gunner seat of a Humvee is always fun. And those little targets, they reacted well. They popped nicely. Hearing your buddies scream at you over the gunfire, like it was all good. But knowing what I know now, I would simplify it a little bit. This was probably my most complicated stage, quote unquote complicated. And we would simplify it to give people a little bit better chance of success.
I would have liked a little more chance at success. It was a fun stage. My wife shot the pistol. I did the rifle. The strongman stuff wasn't too bad. I wonder if there were 5 pieces instead of 4.
I think there were 5.
There might have been 5, and you could do it in 4, or you could do it in 3 if you doubled up the Pelican case, I think, and the sandbag.
So what I did, so I think there were 5, and what I did was I carried Pelican case and sandbag on one trip, and then there were 2 30s and a 50, or 2 50s and a 30 ammo can, and I turned the 30 on its side on top of the 2 50s and picked the 2 50s up and carried it on the second trip, which is a good thing because John, who is a very good pistol shooter, he beat me to the Humvee on our run. So I was like, oh crap, I'm way behind here. But it worked out. Anyways, go on.
Right. So I've hurt my back in the past, and so I'm kind of sensitive to these stages, and I try not to kill myself on them. And I don't think anything was extreme. Like nothing was. I didn't pick up anything. I was like, ooh, like everything picked up. I was like, 50 pounds, 60 pounds, that's fine. 70 pounds.
Yeah, it should all been right at 30 to 40. So
so it wasn't a thing because there are dragging that dummy at some of those matches where it's like 150 and you're just like, hold it together. That it wasn't like that. So everything was fine. I thought I had plenty of time since my wife was shooting the pistol. No fault, no slight to her. But I thought, so I was like, let's not get my heart rate up too crazy. And so I took my trips, got into the seat, and I didn't have much time by the time I was in the Humvee when she was done. And so I was kind of surprised by that. But I had put the bipod, I was using one bipod between both my rifles, and I'd put it onto the AR-15 for this stage because I figured 100 yards, this is AR playground, and got set up and everything. And my wife started telling me the things. And so she says, shoot the spade. I shoot the spade. And she says, shoot the diamond. And I shoot the diamond. And the RO's not calling hits. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then she's like, well, shoot the left spade. Okay, this the left? I shoot the left spade. And I'm looking at the RO. And she's like, oh, shoot the left spade 2 times. I'm like, okay, left spade 2 times. I'm shooting. And then, so we were having a true marital communication issue on this stage because she didn't read all the stuff. She just read like shoot the spade. And then you had to shoot, like you said, it was spade next to the wood line 2 times. And then, then right heart, whatever. And so whatever all the info was, you needed all the info. And so she climbed up into the Humvee because she thought I couldn't hear her. And I was like, I can hear you. I'm shooting. You're saying I'm shooting. RO's not calling because we're not getting this all together, the 3 of us. And so we ended up timing out. The shooting wasn't too bad, but I will say that the seeing the shapes, we were about a third of the way through. It was kind of hard to tell the shapes because the dirt around them had been all shot out. And so a black spade on black dirt is kind of hard to pick out. And you can zoom in more, but now was that the left one or was this, like you can hunt and peck. And so I think we got through most of the rifle stuff before we lost time out on that one. But it was a fun stage. We were close. We were real close, but we had a little bit of that communication issue. So,
which is what I was trying to push. And on the target ID, me and of course, the whole trip home is basically a giant after action report. In the future, I think I would try to find like some sort of backer for the targets so that the shot out doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, I like that aspect. When I do team matches, the communication part I think is what I enjoy with it. Because when you get people who shoot a lot together, communicate well, you do well at that. So you can take two shooters that are like 80% shooters or 70% shooters of like whoever the top, maybe the best shooter there. But if the two top shooters don't communicate well, they're not going to do well. But you could be a less of a shooter, but communicate well, work well together, and perform better. And that's the idea I think about with a team match. That communication's critical. And you've done that in the past. With the radios at your first match at Lucas Oil. So there's been stuff like that. I mean, and I've stolen that radio one. I've done a team match the last 2 years, like a 3-gun team match and 2-person match, and I've used the radio each year because it's amazing how many people rush it. They start talking before they hit the button, or it's easy to do. So
a good skill.
Yeah. Yep, it is. Yeah, and communicating in a radio is not.
Yeah. So the funny thing too is I thought it was the ROs that were screwing up, and I'm like, what's going on over here? It was more, what's going on over here? And as soon as we walk off the stage, she's just like, we're both laughing. I was like, what happened? She's like, I don't know. I didn't think you needed to know all that stuff. I just gave you the targets. What do you need? It's like, okay, it's okay. She shot the pistol great, so that was fine. Like she held up great on everything there. It was silly. It was fine.
And it's something that you now know, hey, this is something that maybe we need to work on. And even in dry fire, right? Like give me this list of targets here, randomize it on the laptop, right? On this Excel spreadsheet and walk me through the wall. All right. Tell me which target to aim at the wall. Like that's a skill you can work on in your basement. Like,
right. So going back to skills though, we can talk about that too. Like the plate or the dueling trees. We have a dueling tree at my gun range. She practiced the dueling tree. She came into that ready. And so she did fine on that, that sort of stuff. When you talk about practicing skills, you get intel on this stuff, you can practice it and work on some of those things. So that part went great for her too. So.
Well, and if we're going to talk about maybe some real world takeaway skills, good, precise, quick communication between, a team, husband, wife, friends that are doing whatever, together. She's looking at that, not giving you all the information, whereas obviously in this case, it was really important. So, being in a team where you can quickly understand, okay, well, all this information is important and I need to give it to them in a concise manner. That's a good skill to have, like I said, especially for a married couple, because communication is always it's not always happening the way it should between married couples.
Like even today we took 3 kids to the circus and then stopped at a couple of places on the way home, right? Like, and one of the places was Hobby Lobby, and it was Black Friday, and we were in Hobby Lobby, and it's like, oh my god! And I was like, okay, you go with that kid, I'll watch these 2, and then we ended up like trading, and like we never said a word to each other after we split, but we knew where everybody was because we could communicate well, concisely, like But so it's a literal translation of that. Like, here, I need to know this information, and you have it, tell it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that was stage 3,
2.
correct?
That was stage 2.
2. Okay, so on to stage 3.
Stage 3 was we knew stage 2 was going to be hard. We didn't know it was going to be as hard as it was. So we kind of planned stage 3 to be super quick, super fun, super blaster type stage. And you always want to give, or at least I try to give a couple of stages throughout the match where even the absolute bottom, 5% shooter is gonna complete a stage, right? They're gonna get a win at some point today. And the top shooters can just blaze. Like, I want them to just really feel like John Wick on a stage, right? So this stage was one of those. You started about 20 yards back, thanks to a generous RO. You had the chance before the stage started to load 10 rounds of 9mm into a mag, load it into a full auto MP5, and empty it at the target in the berm. But that was on your runtime. It was whether or not you wanted to take the time to do it. If you didn't want to, if you were really trying to race, you didn't have to. But you started about 20 yards back into a standard 50-yard 3-gun bay, right? On the beat, you run up the berm, up the back berm. At the top of the berm, there are 2 barrels. These are your shooting positions. Shooter on the left is going to shoot pistol. Shooter on the right is going to shoot rifle. Pistol shooter has a plate rack of 5 diamonds. They were 6-inch diamond plates, and they were at 9 yards. You shot left to right and then right to left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rifle shooter spread out on kind of the hill behind the berm there, had 5 non-circle plates. Like, none of the plates on this stage were circles. I wanted all weird shapes. Even if they were just IPSICs, I just wanted weird stuff. And he had 5 targets out there ranging from 60 to about 85 yards. And they were ranging in size from about 7x9 IPSICs to, I think my biggest one was like a 12-inch diamond. And he went left to right, right to left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I had a lot of fun shooting it. The berm was a good, hey, get the heart rate up, but it wasn't super tough. Like, it wasn't anything nobody could do. I realized exactly how close 10 yards was on this stage. Like, this was the first stage we built with a 10-yard pistol rack. I was like, wow, that's real close. It didn't help because it was literally at the bottom of the backhand side berm. And I was like, man, that's real close. But it did what it was supposed to do. It gave everybody a win. Everybody had fun with it. And coming off of 2, it was real close to 2. It was only like a quarter mile from 2. Like, so you had about a mile to 1, and about 3/4 of a mile to 2, and then a quarter mile from 2 to 3. So it was a real quick bounce back, kind of a rebound type stage.
Yeah, I mean, I shot the rifle. I shot crappy. I don't know why. Haven't not enough practice. I will blame Tiger. I did shoot one section out of order because it was like 3 and then 2 targets kind of above each other, and then the 5th one. And so I shot, this way and then down, and then it's like, no, this one was first because only one out of the 5 had a red target holder too, and so it didn't. I'm just looking for excuses here, folks. I'm just trying.
That post was painted 5 years ago. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
It was a fun stage. It was fine. I just wanted to be faster than I was. Mike, our friend from the show, he was the RO. He's over there talking to my wife as I'm struggling to shoot. She's ran through all the pistol stuff because we'd practiced plate racks. She's done with that. They're having a good chat as I'm like, is the red stick? No, not the. Oh yeah, that is a target. So it was fine. It was fun, but yeah, it could have been better.
Suck less.
Right, exactly. Hey, mid pack. We were mid pack on that one. We felt real good about that.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think
So,
I think my DNF rate on that was like, actually, I don't know if anybody. I think it was 0%. Like I think I had that one was a 0% DNF rate. So, which is my first ever 0%. So yay for that.
well, yeah, I mean, when it comes to that, someone can have a gun malfunction. It doesn't have to be a hard
Right.
stage. Just like
Yeah.
someone's gun takes a crap, and you just, yeah. So that it doesn't have to be a hard stage. You get a DNF. So I could see that not happening often. All right, so we've left 3. We head to 4. Was talk about that one. Was that your long range stage?
That was my long range stage,
That's
and
what I
and
thought.
it was a hike. So 2 to 3 was real fast. 3 to 4 is a mile and a half, and it's up a switchback that goes up the Soul Crusher Hill. Like you go across a creek, and then you go up like this one section of the hill where you go like 100 feet up and about 100 yards of linear distance, and then you flatten out for a bit, and then you have another steep section, and then it was a pretty healthy hike to get up there. But stage 4 is my long range stage. I provided a platform this year. It was pretty stable considering that we literally threw it together while we were out there off of an old fencing trailer and a couple of pallets. Um, and then the trick this year was it was 11 targets. It ended up being 11 targets from 929 to 10 yards. I had 2 throoms at 10 yards. If you cold board the 929, you didn't have to shoot the throoms. So you could theoretically do it in 9 hits. From 929 to about 100. And hurts me to say it. I didn't shoot it as well as I had intended to, but I did the math, and I was holding because I shot it like 3 days before everybody else. So my match is completely different than everybody else's. I was holding 2.5 mils of wind at 929 yards, all the way up to about 400 yards, and that equates to about 21 miles an hour of wind with my dope, my gun, like all of that stuff. I will say I was really proud of how well me and John shot it as a team. We didn't have the top time or anything like that. I think we did it in like 2 minutes and 15 seconds or something. But I hit from 929 to about 500. And then as I was dialing back down, because I dialed up to make those hits, as I was dialing down, he goes, "Oh, you're in my world now." And he smoked 400 to 100 in the time it took me to dial to 0. Like he hit 5 targets, 4 targets in the time it literally took me to click down. And then he's like, "Just the throoms left." And I said, "Well, I got the one on the right." And we both squeezed the trigger at the same time. Both throoms flipped up. I hit the 929 on my second shot. For those of you who are curious, but like I left that stage or like right after we shot that stage, I felt really good about how well we had done as a team, even if my performance was less than I had wanted it to be. So, Mark, how'd you guys do? I don't even remember how you guys did.
Well,
We
I
did
was
all
gonna say,
right.
Mark, you had I think RO day ended up being okay-ish, but your day, Mark, was pretty windy from what I've heard.
I will
Like
say
really, really gusty.
that valley is really hard because you get wind behind you that's going from either a little bit right to left or a lot of left to right, and then at the bottom of the hill you get a full value left to right. Like that canyon has a full value left to right, and then going up the other side you get a lot of right to left wind. So it's a hard valley to shoot. um I will say, for those of you who are going to shoot Zombie 2023, practice your wind calls, because that I left all the stakes up. It's going to be that same target presentation. We'll change the stage some, but practice your wind calls because it's going to be tough.
Yeah, so when we stepped off, it was like 15, 16 mile an hour wind is what, like, if you looked up the weather, it said 15, 16 mile an hour. And it was gusty. It depended, depending on where you were in the woods, if you felt all that wind. Um, I ended up doing, I'm not the best at calling wind. And so for my first shot, I just held straight on. And because I could feel wind behind me and I could see wind going every different direction in the valley. And so I just held on and I figured, whatever, let's send it. And we'll adjust there. And I ended up connecting on that first shot. So I got lucky there. When I went to the next one, I could see my splash in the dirt and it was over a mill off because you'd come down from the top
Yep.
the way, like Tiger said, it's a valley. And so 900 was up on the top. And then once you got down into the valley, into more of the cut of it, that's when I picked up almost over a mil of wind. And so I held on that one. And then I'm running the bolt action. My wife didn't even chamber around in her rifle. She was running a laser rangefinder. And that was another problem for people. And, you didn't mention that either. The only thing that we knew was 930 on the far. We didn't know anything else as far as distance went. And so, 3-gun range, 400 or 500 yards, you can kind of guess your way through that. But it gets to be a difference at 700, 800, whatever yards. And so we had brought a rangefinder with, and she had my dope cart. And so she was ranging and telling me mills. But the other problem was, and a lot of teams ran into this talking to people afterwards, is all the trees and stuff in that cut was just playing havoc with the rangefinders. And so she would range. She told me pretty close on that second target. She said it was something in the 800s. And I thought that seemed too close, or I thought the target seemed farther away than what she was saying, but they were pretty close to each other. And so I kind of made adjustments, or I shot at what she called and then made the wind adjustment, and she was pretty close on that one. But then once you got in, I think once you hit 700, you hit trees and it would tell you like 270 or 250.
Yeah.
And it was clearly not. And that was actually, talking about training, one of the things we practiced with the rangefinder is using context clues. And so like we had practiced at my range, not even on the range, but just looking around the area and like, all right, if you hit that billboard and it tells you 300 yards, what do you think? Is that right or wrong? And, you make adjustments. All right, try shoot at the ground of that billboard and shoot at the tree next to it. Now you're kind of getting an idea. And so she ended up guessing some ranges for me and giving me clues like try 6.5 mils on this one. And so it ended up working out well enough between my wind holds and her guesses on range that we ended up clearing the stage. And somehow, again, I think there was a lot of luck involved, but somehow we were the only ones that cleared the stage on Saturday. And so I felt very fortunate on that everything kind of came together for us. So,
well, yeah, and that's another thing too. Like, not while I was shooting it, but I went up during RO day, and like a guy was shooting and he shot in a tree at about 300 yards. I literally saw a limb fall off of it because he'd smoked. The bullet had. You were literally shooting over or through a tree at that range. But yeah, it was really a weird sensation because I consider myself a pretty good long range shooter. Like that's what I did before run and gun. And I really struggled on it, and I was like, guys, I don't know, maybe we need to make this stage easier. Like I don't know, like. And then RO day rolls around, and 7 of my 14 teams, RO teams, clear it. Like that, and a lot of them beat me. Like I was like, well, shit, maybe I just suck. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. I was like, well, we'll leave it. Hell, half of them hit it. If half of the teams make it, that's a great stage. And then Saturday rolls around, and Mark and Kayla are the only ones out of 60 some other teams. And I was like, ooh, maybe I should have made it easier. But I always know my long range stage is gonna mess with people. But I thought it was a good stage.
right.
So
And
I have
we talked
ideas
about this. We talked about it in the pre-show though. Like I practiced out to 700 with that gun. You know, I'm not saying it was all chance. You know, we practiced together on the rangefinder, calling out distances. She had the dope chart. We had done a lot of our homework. It just kind of came to connecting on that day. And
Yeah,
like we just talked about on the stage before that, my rifle in general that day wasn't the best on every stage.
right.
So it worked out all right.
Yeah. That and so you were making me think. We're talking rangefinders. I got my first rangefinder not long ago. I did a bunch of reading and I've been doing a bunch of practicing, kind of like what Mark's talking about. Um, one thing for people who are new to rangefinders, one thing to realize is you have some kind of reticle in there, whether it's a circle, whether it's a plus sign, a dot, whatever. That is not necessarily where the laser is going to hit when you shoot that downrange. So even a really quality rangefinder, it's not necessarily like I put that dot on it and that's the exact spot. So you think about when you get to 900 yards, 800 yards, um, even a real fine little point, there's a lot of there's a lot of area that's inside that little aiming point. So it's worth going out and doing some testing and experimenting and seeing where your rangefinder hits, and then understanding is like Mark's talking about using context clues. Kind of, if you lay something and it says it's 100 yards, and you're like, man, that looks really really tiny. You're probably hitting something before it, or if you lay something and it says it's real far, like something's not
Probably
something's
missed.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, something's not going on here. So I've actually taken mine and I'll hold low. Like if there's a bush, there's trees, something, I'll hold low and I'll come up. It's like, oh, okay, that says 200 yards. That tree is probably 200 yards. And then bring it up and see where, okay, now I'm hitting 500 yards. So yeah, that
Yeah.
looks like it's about 500 yards. And I know now that in my, I got a SIG, it's got kind of a big circle, which
Big
doesn't
circle.
seem as ideal, but I understand now from doing it a little more where inside that circle my laser is going to be hitting. So there's practice goes into it. It's not just a tool. You just stick it up there and click it and you're like, oh, there it is. I know exactly where, what the
And
distance is.
that's actually another thing too. Like, you talk about using the context clues. I was just hunting, it's hunting season right now. And the other day we were all out hunting, and me and John Drossert, we were at this spot, and I was like, look, that corner right there from here is 600 yards. Like, I knew that because I had ranged that corner before, and we didn't have a rangefinder on us. And some deer ran out, and they were in on the field, like if this is the corner, they were here, right? And he's like, "What's the range on that?" And I said, "I don't know, 450 to 500 or whatever whatever it was that I said." And I guesstimated it at 480. And he heard 550 to 6 for whatever reason, and he guesstimated it at 580. He shot way over top of his deer, right? Like, I was like, dude, it's 600 to there. They're obviously closer, right? Like, uh, whereas I hit mine, uh, but it was, and then another guy came out and we ranged to the spot and it was at like 462 or something. I was a little high or whatever it was. But yeah, using those context clues, like, hey, if that target's at 929, this target can't be at 270 because it's only a little bit in front of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
So if we go
Yeah.
into this, we're kind of going into a deep dive, but if we really want to get into the old pro tips of the mid packers, uh, there's like on the Vortex rangefinders, there's first thing that the laser hits, and then last thing the laser hits. So if you're shooting between trees and your target's somewhere in there, you're gonna get beam bouncing off of everything because there's dispersion in the beam. And
right,
so you can have it pick up whatever the last thing, the farthest away thing it was, or the closest thing, depending on where you expect your target to be with all that noise. And then another thing, I don't know if this is this specific vortex I have, but a lot of them, the beam is kind of like a bar. It's not a point. And so one of the things that we practiced beforehand is actually turning your rangefinder 90 degrees, and then you're shooting a beam like this instead of a beam like this. Because, going up a hill, this works great. But if you're trying to shoot between stuff, sometimes turning your rangefinder 90 degrees. Again, this is secret sauce. You've listened for an hour, so you're already into it if you want to hear this stuff. But, like Ryan said, you have to go out and test it. Not all rangefinders work that way, but that is one sort of little hack, I guess you'd call it, of rangefinders that can be helpful for you. So
yeah, I think the main takeaway you should take from this is don't just buy a piece of gear, drag it out to a match, and assume that this piece of gear is going to help your performance, because all of the gear we use, there's a lot of nuance to it. I mean, there's nuance to everything. So if someone says, hey, this is the greatest, this is the best, you should always ask at what, there's a grip out there and you're like, well, that's the stupidest thing ever. Maybe for what you're using. I make fun of like fixed power or second focal plane MOA reticles, and scopes. I'm like, why in the world, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? If you're an F-class shooter and all you're doing is all you're doing is F-class, then a 5 to 25 second focal plane with MOA reticles, like that's what, from what I understand, I've not shot it, that's what they use.
Just a duplex, like a real fine duplex.
Yeah.
And the second focal plane going up to like Burris, I think, has the 8 to 40 or whatever, and they're like, I want all the magnification, and I do not want that aiming point to be like, it needs to be super fine. So
or it's got to be the exact. Yeah, I mean, it's like for what I do, that would be the stupidest scope you could get. For running gun, for PRS, for 3-gun, like that would be just a dumb scope to have. Not to make fun. If someone has that, use it. Learn to use it the best you can. I don't want to gear snob you, but like practically, if someone said, hey, what can I buy to do these sports? Don't buy that. That's not on the list. Yeah. That's not on the list. But when you shoot F-class, so understand whatever gear it is, there's nuance to it. There's a reason that they make it. For the most part, there's a good reason. Sometimes people just make it because they don't know, manufacturers and companies don't know any better. But most gear has a use. So,
one more thing that we often discuss, you guys are talking reticles. This fits in with this too. Learn your stuff. A lot of people talk about Christmas tree reticles, or reticles that have drop and wind, are too busy, or if they got too much stuff going on. So my wife was running a 6 or 7 power rangefinder. The RO said he would try and call hits if he could see them, misses, and help you out. But without that Christmas tree, I would have had no idea what my wind hold was. But I could see in the glass, my hit is over here. And now I can hold that difference on those things. So that was one thing that helped me. And I could maybe even be guilty of saying they're too busy. But without that, I wouldn't have had that, 1+ mil wind call. And then we can do a whole thing on backwards math, and 1 mil at this is okay. It's a 6 mile an hour wind. Now I kind of get an idea, but just having a reference that it was in the dirt here. Now I hold here, and those sort of things without practicing it. It's just dots in a scope if you don't get out there and train with that stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's go on, Dyer.
I think we need to do a whole episode on scope and scope design and reticles and stuff, because you guys know I'm a math nerd, and that's like I've taken I took 3 master's level classes on optics and optical design, and it's like I could talk for days about it. Actually, we're covering it in one of my astronomy classes right now, and I'm like, my kids are like, just let it go. And I was like, no, this is something you need to know. But
you know what? The nice thing about what Mark's talking about with the reticle is that, like, there's not, in a lot of ways, there's not math to be done. Like,
right.
It's a ruler. Yeah, it's a ruler. So when someone says, like, well, how far off was that? Well, in feet and inches and like centimeters, who the hell cares? It's this many dots, and that's how many dots I need to hold over. Now, it's good to know what the increments of those dots are in case you're wanting to use your turrets and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's just a ruler, and it could be inches, feet, the king's foot, like,
Yeah, pounds,
it,
miles worth of sand, the whole thing. Yeah, we'll talk about all
yeah,
that later.
it's just the ruler, and it, like he said, he saw where it splashed, and he's like, oh, that's the third dot over, so I'm just gonna hold 3 dots to the other direction now and break my shot and hit the target. I mean, at 900 yards.
Lies.
Yep, absolutely. So stage 4, going on to stage 5.
All right, so stage 5 was so we're at the top of what was Soul Crusher in 2020, is where the long range stage was, shooting out. So then and Dustin, he talked about it because he was RO in stage 4 for me. He was like, it was some of the most fun and demoralizing things I could tell people. You see the top of that ridge over there? Go there, hang a left. Like, and it's a solid mile. Like, I love that valley so much because it's just awful. And this time you're going up the steep side, right? Like, and it was a no shit climb. Like, that was a no joke hill. So you get to the top of that, you hang a left, you go over into this little field, and a zombie classic and one of the fan favorites from forever has returned. Beware of Bathrooms 2.0. And I can't tell you exactly how janky of a porta shitter I bought, but it was bad because we ended up putting it back together. I told Tim Cox, who was one of my ROs, I was like, I want this thing to look like a porta shitter, whatever you got to do. And he used duct tape and zip ties and wood screws and like, so this stage was pretty simple. Shooter 1 sits in the porta shitter, is armed with a single shot SBS 10 gauge. Shooter 2 pulls.
Again, this is Tiger's gun. If you want a ridiculously impractical gun, but that is still like, I mean, I haven't got to shoot this gun yet. I really want to shoot this gun. There's nothing in my life I want to shoot more than an SBS 10 gauge. So one more reason to shoot zombie next year.
Yeah, for sure. Shooter 2, he pulls the door open. We got a string there, so Shooter 2 pulls the door open. Shooter 1 gets to take a shot with the 10 gauge, and all the targets, there are 25 flipper targets, anywhere from about 7 yards to about 28 is the range, and some of them are bunched up together, and some of them are spread out, and they're all kind of in tall grass, so they're a little bit hard to find. Maybe I know the most that anyone knocked down with the 10 gauge shot was 4. I knocked down 3 with mine. Some people knocked down 2. Some people missed entirely, and I'm not sure how you do that. Because let me tell you something, the spread on that gun is pretty wide. But this was another one of those just straight up blaster, have fun. And then after that, it's all pistol, right? Like, and this stage has graced us with the Zombie 2023 profile picture, because as you guys know, we did a costume contest. Couple of guys that had ran in 2020 came back, and Muhammad Bayatpour and his partner, both very large, very brown people, right? Like, dressed up as the white chicks. And let me tell you something, if you've never seen a 6'4" brown man dressed as a white chick kick a fucking porta shitter door open and storm out of it with an SBS 10 gauge screaming, "Get off of my lawn," you've not lived, man. Like, it was the highlight of my weekend. He literally came out in a skirt that came no longer than mid-thigh. I guarantee you that. And he's got a drop leg holster on, but he can't even latch it around his leg because he's wearing a skirt. So there's nowhere to latch. So it's flopping. It was the greatest thing ever. Like, I would run zombie again just to watch that. Like, there is no other reason to do this match. But it was.
Wait, now,
too,
I want to paint the picture. First of all, I said big beards. They both have big beards. And they had like a Beats pod or whatever. So they were playing white girl anthems the entire time.
The whole
And
time.
they were following us, like they were right behind us pretty much the entire match. And so we hear, like Avril Lavigne and Vanessa Carlton,
like Spice
Girls.
Girls and
Yes,
The
the
Keith
entire
Swift
the
time.
whole 9 yards.
Yes.
It was fantastic. But going back to the stage, it really was a good stage. It's a good blaster stage. And I think my DNF rate on this one was like 3 or 4%. The cheat code actually was unprepared, because the unprepared pistol for this one was a Taurus TX22. You got two 18-round mag, or whatever they come with, 14-round mags, 15-round mags. So, like, as far as just like blasting little flipper targets out to 10 or 20, like, you don't get much faster than a 22 pistol at that. So it was a good stage. Or at least I thought it was fun. Everybody talked about how much fun it was. Everybody loves shooting out of the porta shitter. I don't know. Like, I guess we're all, or Woody Harrelson at heart. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a fun stage. I am of the school of thought of the movie Unforgiven, and I tell this to all new 3-gun shooters, that given the choice, always use a shotgun. That when pistol or shotgun, there's that scene in the movie, you always use shotgun. And so my plan is always to shoot the farthest pistol target with the shotgun and then hose all the close stuff. And the ROs gave me no confidence in the ability of this shotgun to hit anything, to knock anything down. And so I ended up just shooting the closest stuff to me with
That's
it.
the only way. You
Yeah.
get I will say this, you get much past about 10 or 12 yards with this shotgun, and the spread is so wide that it's like it's unreal. Like, so on a full-sized IPSC, the day I cut it, I did this experiment. Before I chopped the barrel, group about like that at 25 yards, or pattern, a couple of flyers, pattern about like that. Then I shot another shot at 25 after I chopped the barrel, and I think I landed 27 BBs on a full-size dipstick. Like, like it's
Halo City on something like that. I mean,
yeah.
like, I don't know what the diameter of a cylinder bore in a 10 gauge is, but I'm guessing that when you cut it where it's at, you are like well beyond cylinder bore, and you're
No.
Like, so it's a donut. You probably got all the shot to the outside, and there's just, they got a hole in the middle. A human could probably be safe inside.
The recoil
I'm not
is stout
volunteering to
too.
test it out.
The recoil,
You think?
it was
It's a 10 gauge.
So there's like a sharp recoil that some guns have, and there's some guns will get you in the face. This was just such an aggressive push that it didn't really bother you when you shot, but you got done, you're like, what was that all about? Like,
I'm imagining it's like pulling both triggers on a double barrel. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, like an old school side-by-side coach gun. You just smash both of them, and like it's got some, you're putting some lead down range, so it's got a little bit of oomph behind it.
I tell people before they shoot it that recoil and noise are considerable.
Oh man, you need to somehow like thread that for a Savo 12.
I don't even know that it would work, like, because there's so much pressure. There is so much pressure.
I don't know what those are. You'd probably have to talk to them, and they'd probably be like, no.
No, like even if they were like, you could shove a 10 gauge amount of shot through a Salvo 12, like, how
well, it's a 12 gauge. So it's a 12 gauge, so you probably wouldn't work. You'd need a Savo 10.
Yeah, like, and if they would build one, I would buy it. But even at that, how like Thunder Beast has the minimum like barrel length, like it needs to be 8 inches for 300 blackout. I'm fairly certain I am way beyond that, like way underneath minimum barrel length.
Yeah. All right. So this is stage 5. You got how many stages was this? 6 or 7?
8.
All right. Well, let's kind of try to scoot along these, because we're at an hour 13 now. So
they'll get over it.
All right. So next stage 6.
Stage 6. So it was a decent little hike, not terrible. So this is a one that kind of gained some infamy in all of the pre-match intelligence. It was the Konami code, which I did not expect as much pushback about shooting the Konami code as I got. I provided it pre-match. I provided it on the course, like before you got there. There was a silhouette screwed to a tree with the code on it. Or if you didn't know it, you could run over, flip a tire, and the RO would tell you the code. So the stage is as follows: Shooter 1 enters the shoot box, has a target, array of targets that are laid out like a Nintendo controller. There's an up, a down, a left, a right. Select, start, B, A, right? And you had to shoot it up, down, down, left, right, or it was A, B, A, select, right? 11 hits that you had to shoot in a certain order. And if
Start.
you,
BA
huh?
start.
Whatever it was, start, yeah.
You're losing your nerd credentials here. I just want you to know it's looking.
I can't tell you how many times I recited that damn code in the last 8 months for people. But anyways, so that while they're shooting that, shooter 2 is climbing up a short A-frame, right? And it's like 7 steps. Like it's not really that big of a deal. And out in the field, the closest one is at about 100, and the furthest one was actually at 350. I wanted it to be at 4, but I just couldn't. My zombies, because they were zombie shaped targets, ended up being significantly skinnier than I expected them to be. So if the pistol shooter shot the code correctly, you only had to hit each target once. There were 7 of them out there. If they didn't, you had to hit each target 3 times. And the initial stage brief was that you would have to cycle through them 3 times. And we realized that was going to be like impossible to do. So we, you triple tap it, you move on. You triple tap it, you move on. And again, I had some tall grass out there, kind of made it hard to see. You had to kind of find them a little bit. There were actually tires on the front of the A-frame. It was a flat-topped A-frame with tires on the front. I really thoroughly enjoyed shooting it. I shot the rifle for this. I didn't shoot it as well as I could have for whatever reason, but I thought it was a good stage. Some people disagreed with me, but it really landed where I wanted it to. Difficulty wise, I think I had like a 35% ish DNF rate, which is a good average number to have on a stage. And people will be like, "Man, that's awful high," and I'm like, "Nah, not really." Compared to the 90% that stage 4 was or something. But yeah, like I said, I thought it was a good stage. I'm gonna give Mark some shit before he gets a chance to shoot, because I happened to be there while he was shooting it. And he's carried this bolt gun the whole time, and he's just cleared stage 4, and he's feeling like a rock star, and he could not have shit the bed harder. Like I think he could have handed the gun to his wife, who's probably never shot the bolt gun, and she would have been like, "Oh, this is easy." Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So it was, coming off of stage 4 where they told me, they're like, no one's cleared this yet. I'm like, have you guys seen me out here? I'm the king with this gun.
Dick's dragging the ground. It's so big right now.
Right?
Yeah, right.
So we get up there, and this is another thing pre-match. We've been practicing the Konami code because my wife is not a nerd that knows these things, or even, any video game. So we had joked about it in the pre-match that, my kids, when I tell the kids the code, they're like, "Oh, up, down, down." They get it right away. So they'll be like driving to school. They're like, "Mom, what's the code?" And she'll be like, up, down. By the time I'm at the top of the A-frame, she shot all the pistol. Like I just barely got up there. And so, like Tiger said, there's big tires, and you had enough space to get in a really nice position in between the tires. I get up there and they're like, "Go." And I'm just like, threw the rifle on the top of a tire and just started. And I was so shaky and just I don't know if we've talked about this much, but forcing shots where you're like, yeah, that's close. Yeah, that'll go. And I'm doing this, and the more you force shots, it's like tilt. If you ever, games where the worse you do, the worse you do, right? And I'm just terrible. And then one of the known issues with this rifle is that the 10 round magazines do not feed very well. And at one point, I'm running the bolt and I've got no rounds. And then I hear Tiger, drop the mag. He's so I drop the mag and it's just a maraca of bullets inside there. I throw that down and it was just terrible. I think I got 5 of the 7 maybe, and then we timed out, and it was just like Tiger is just like he looks at me and just gets in the side by side and drives away. He's just like, no, that was terrible. So yeah, it was a struggle fest on that one for sure. And so I think I actually had 2 of my mags didn't work right. The one went to maracas and the other just was not going. And so I think I put that one back in. I don't know what I ended up doing, but it was everything that could go wrong went wrong.
It was real painful to watch. I will say that. But you talk about because there was a nice V between tires that you could rest. I watched 7 different teams shoot that stage, and I actually ended up committing cardinal sin as far as PRS shooters went. I went prone sideways, which is a god awful position to actually shoot long range in. But it worked, right? On that one, I actually shot around the rightmost tire. Honestly, the most stable positions I saw was Wes Bennett. He went sitting on top and used the V. And then I think it was Daniel Arterburn, or somebody who shot right before or after him. He didn't go all the way to the top. He actually stayed on the A-frame portion, standing, and shoved his rifle through the middle of the tire and rested on it. Which was super stable, right? Because your big wide base, you have a full rest. It worked. So,
well, that sounds like a fun stage, and I enjoy where there's kind of a challenge to solve. Here's a shooting position. It's not your normal shooting position. We're not just VTAC boards are a good example. We've all shot VTACs. When you start shooting at angles and you start doing this, okay, well that's a challenge. I got to think of height over bore and that, but you're just standing there or you're just kneeling there. But give you an A-frame with some tire and that, or these different kind of improvised positions, and it really shows you who's practice. And I think that's something we're having more match experience really does help, because you've shot in weird things before. I've seen this. I know I can do something like this,
right.
So, but to Mark, that's one thing. Were you shooting your bolt gun during that you said that didn't feed well? You're low on ammo. Most ARs, I got a 30 round mag, I got a 40 round mag, I got a couple of 30 or whatever. You got 10 rounds before you got to switch your mag, and shot to shot is slower. Even if you run a bolt quick, you're still, you got to have that follow through, all that. So when you start missing with a bolt gun, man, that little voice in the back of your head that's like, speed up, you're losing time, speed up, is getting louder and louder. And that voice
the correct action is to slow down. Okay, yes. I just missed. Why? Let me think about why I just pulled that shot.
Right. The wind too. Yeah. The wind in that valley was different as we walked in. So you come down a hill into the flat spot, and it's a big flat spot. And the shooting was at the end of it. When we walked down, I was dropping grass and it was coming right into us. And then as we went through the middle where it was kind of wet there, it was right behind us. And by the time we got to shooting, it was all the way to the side. And it was constantly shifting around us. And so that's another thing that gets in your head too. You're like, well, these are skinny targets. I'm missing because of wind. Which way is the wind? And you're thinking a million different things and none of them are helping you. It's just slow down. You're not in a good position. Get a knee up, get set, find a different way to solve this problem. You can't do the same thing wrong enough times.
If Zombie 2022 will be known for anything, it will be the wind, because it was averaging somewhere between 15 and 40 literally from Wednesday through Sunday morning. Like it never stopped.
Yeah, and if you don't shoot in switchy winds or the higher winds, and I've shot in enough of it to know I'm not very good at it. But when you're talking valleys and hills, and if anyone knows how an airplane wing works, high pressure and low pressure, like a valley or a hill, they make a funnel for wind. I mean, you're getting wind speeding up here, and then they die off here, and it's going quick here, but from this side it's coming. I mean, it's not it's somewhat like water. If you think, like, if you look at things, you think, well, it kind of flows this way, but except you have all these levels. It's not so cut and dry. So towards the surface, you got this speed, a little bit higher, you got this. There's definitely a lot of challenge to really getting good at calling wind like that.
Yeah, I legit learned as much about fluid dynamics and wind calls in an oceanography class because they have the levels. That's enough water that you have the levels. As I've learned in anywhere else, other than literally just going to people who know how to shoot in the wind and go, okay, teach me what you're seeing. Tell me what you see when you look at this field. Oh, well, I see this, and then it's going up the hill, so it's gonna lift your bullet a little bit, so it's gonna come off of your elevation this way, and it's gonna be a half value here, and and I'm like, oh my god, like, and if you have a person like that in your life, buy them beer and go shoot, like, because it's invaluable.
Yeah, well, I've even heard of classes, precision rifle classes. They'll pop smoke out there, and then the smoke, you get to see what it's doing. Intellectually, I understand a lot of that. When it rubber meets the road, I've got a little bit of experience, but I don't have enough to be really good. And sometimes, as Tiger said earlier, I just have to trust the bullet and send a round down range. And, oh, well, that missed off to the left. I guess I need to hold. I guess I need to hold to the right. So,
and that's I actually took advice from a PRS buddy of mine and went over to a good buddy of mine who has 1,200 yards of cornfields. You can see in every direction, and he has a Kestrel, right? A little weather meter that tells you the wind. And we got on a phone call with each other, and I sat at the shooting bench, and he walked out in the middle of the field and held the Kestrel up, and I said, "Okay, it's blowing at 8 miles an hour right there at from 5 to 1 or from 5 to 11. Well, it's at 6 and it's blowing from 4 to 10. So you're close, but you're a little bit off, Okay, well, then he'd walk to a different spot. It's blowing 12 mile an hour there straight towards me. Yeah, that's, it's an 11 straight towards you. Like, if you have somebody who can do that with you, it really does help. We talk about training. We talk about communication. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, so I got a Kestrel this year, was my first time with the Kestrel. And, you can say you can carry a Kestrel on a run and gun, but just learning with the Kestrel beforehand makes a ton of difference. I was way off on just my general sit on my deck and, what do you think the wind is right now? And I was way off. I was like,
yeah,
it's only going this, or it's going this right now, like that huge discrepancy. And just spending time where you're sitting on your back porch or you're grilling or you're, go visit friends and they live somewhere different than you that has a different kind of wind. Because, my backyard only comes in from the northwest. And so when we were on a family vacation this summer, I brought it with to everybody's house. And then they get to play the game, like, what do you think this wind is? And you can kind of test yourself on that stuff. And so
turn it into a drinking game.
Right. They're expensive little toys, but they're kind of worth it if you start to figure these things out. Like, what is 6 mile an hour wind? If you have a 6 mile an hour gun, what does that actually mean? The joke I always tell the new 3-gun shooters too, where we're talking about kind of having fun with this, is like, you don't wear shorts when you're shooting. You have to be able to feel that on your leg hairs. You'll learn, you'll pick it up. You just got to keep working on it.
You know, and you say they're expensive little toys, and they are, right? Like a Kestrel, like a their mid-range model or whatever is like $500 or $600, whatever it is, and that's expensive, right? That's a lot of money. Except you see somebody who drops $2,000 on a Razor 1 to 10 or whatever, and doesn't own a Kestrel and can't make wing calls. Would they have been better served with the $800 Razor 1 to 6 and the $600 Kestrel? Like, you know, it's we tend
Well,
to,
and they're not even that. They've got basic models that tell you when for much less than
yeah,
$600. I
right. Like that's
mean,
the model with the applied ballistics that hooks up to the laser rangefinders Bluetooth wise, so that you can get all like that's like top of the line stuff. You know, yeah, for $300 or $200, whatever it is, like, you know, that's
I think it's 100. I think you can get a cheap Kestrel for around 100, 125 or
okay.
something like.
Yeah,
The
shit.
yeah.
Everyone should own one. I need to buy one. I just play with
Well,
my buddy stuff.
and if you really want to get in the weeds, I just heard about this week. There's a company making a wireless wind meter. You can
Yeah.
link like 2 or 3 of them. I think they said 3 of them together. So you could have one at you could have one at 500 yards, you could have one at 1,000 yards, and you can. I don't know exactly what the data is, if it's on like your master one or what that, but
Whatever.
you can
Yeah.
see wind at all these different distances, and and it's wireless, so you don't have to have your buddy standing out there. You can be shooting and having this live data and see. Because
Perfect. Yeah.
if we haven't told you before, don't shoot with your buddy downrange. That's that breaks rules of firearm safety, and yeah, you do usually don't have friends long when you do that. So all right, we're on to 7 now, correct?
7. Yeah, and it's an eighth of a mile from 6 to 7. Like you can literally see the 2 stages from 1 to 2 or from 6 to 7. Like it's basically a sprint if you want it to be. It's right in front of the lodge. You're shooting actually through a fence line there. And it's a pretty straightforward stage. There's a target at 85, and then there's 6 more targets going out to about 260. Like the furthest target is 260, and it's like 8-inch plates. There's 3 8-inch plates, and then there's 4 like 10 or 12-inch plates. And it's you kind of follow a hillside there, a woods line up, and on the beat, shooter 1 hits the first target with 2 hits. Shooter 2 hits it with 2 hits. Move to target 2, 2 and 2. Each shooter had to double tap, all the way out. So 28 total hits, 14 from each shooter. This stage, I lost it a little bit because one of the funniest things I've ever had happen at a run and gun. So I'm shooting with John Drossert, and he's shooting the Double Star Midnight Dragon, which is a 24-inch barreled target AR-15, right? Like it's designed to do this, and he's struggling. I mean, he's on a struggle bus, and I'm shooting the DSU, right? I'm shooting my own. It was the stage gun for that stage. It's a 10-3 barrel with a 6-inch pin and welded suppressor. Got a 1.5 to 8 on it. He's got like a 6 to 24 or some crazy shit like that on top of his. Like I don't know, but he's struggling, and it was kind of my fault. And if I had thought about it, I wouldn't have done it, because like he's like hit, miss, 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 hit, and before he can even transition to the next one, I'm going pop, pop, hit, hit. So he never gets a break, right? Like he never gets a chance to not be shooting. And it's messing with him, right? Like it's messing with him mentally. And if I'd thought about it on the stage, I would have given him 3 seconds, where he could have caught his breath and everything. We get to the 7th target, and he runs out of ammo entirely. Like he doesn't have any more in mags. Like he's out of ammo. So I reach into my pouch or whatever, and I chuck a mag at him. And I've got 10 of these CAA mags. I got them for like $5.50 a piece several years ago. They're cheap as shit. And his guns traditionally hate them. My guns don't have any problems running them, but he's like, one of these Jam-O-Matics, you mother, bah, bah, bah. Like, I was like, fine, throw it back. So he throws the mag back to me. I drop the P mag out of my rifle, throw that to him. I was like, just hit the damn target. Just damn it, just hit the damn target. He slams the mag in, slams the bolt home. He smokes it. I pick up the Jam-O-Matic mag that he swore wouldn't work, throw it in my rifle. I smoke it twice. Stage over. But I've never seen someone who like turned down free ammo on a stage where they ran out of ammo, right? Like I threw 30 rounds at him. Jesus, you'd think he was appreciative, but he wasn't. But I this stage really shocked me with how many people struggled with it. And I think, and this was one stage that really depended on what time of day you were there. In the morning, the targets were hard to see. Late afternoon, targets were hard to see. But, like over the course of an hour, the whole stage would change because of the layout. And there's nothing that can be done about that, right? Like we gotta shoot where we have safe backdrops. But I thought it was a cool stage. It was kind of a mix between a precision stage and a blaster stage. Because, like I said, 28 hits, but you were going out to 250 on maybe smallish target, 12-inch plate, So something like it will probably make a return in the future because I think people need to get more comfortable shooting out past a couple hundred yards. Not long range, but, the 200 to 250 is a legitimate engagement distance, really.
Intermediate distance. That's really what an
Right.
AR's, in my opinion, designed for. 400 and
yeah,
and that 2 to 3 is kind of practically it.
Yeah, that 200 to 300 yard range is really where an AR should dominate over, like, say, someone shooting an AK or something like that. So
even a bolt gun, because I can put a lot more rounds down range quickly, and that's more than accurate enough for most targets you're shooting at, unless you start getting really, really tiny and you need that like extra accuracy that a good
like
bolt
I said,
gun
12
can
inch
get you.
plates, like that's your chest, right? Like that's a
Yeah, I'm gonna Tiger. Now that like Gen 2 PMags are only like $8.
I picked these up like 4 years ago. They were like $5.
Gen 2 PMags have been $8 for a while now. I'm just gonna throw that
Well,
out there so that you
actually,
don't throw your friends crappy magazines.
I will say this: the reason I bought them was I think they were $5, and then it was like $6 a mag shipped or something like that. And Tom Cuss was working for the company that sold them at the time, and he was like, "Dude, these are," and I've never had a problem out of them. They've never jammed once.
Is that the Israeli company? Are they Israeli?
He was working. No, he was working for DSA or Kalishnikov at the time. But like I said, I've never had a problem out of them. They run fine for me. John just doesn't know how to run his shit.
Mark, you got anything to add about that stage?
No, it was a fun stage. Speaking of train wrecks, I'm glad Tiger saw me crap the bed on the previous stage and not this one. One of the things we talk about, maybe we haven't gone into detail about this, but the idea of where you can't wipe away the last stage out of your mind and you come into the next stage. He's like Tiger said, it was
close.
It was an eighth of a mile away. So I was just finishing putting the last bullet in the mags again as we sat down to shoot that one. And so
you mean your salt shaker?
Yes, exactly. I'd picked out all the rounds there, got the follower straight, put bullets back in there, and we're at the next stage. There was no in between. That's how quick they were together. And my wife shot great and I shot terrible again. All the things that I know to do, all the things that we practiced, like we maybe haven't talked about this, but like the idea of if you have a chance to get into a corner of a barricade, you have now stabilization on the bottom and you have it on the side. She gets tucked right into the corner of the gate and I'm just hanging out in the middle of the fence because why not? Why get into a similar solid position? And
you could have gone prone too. Like
you could have, yeah. It would have been fine there, and just didn't build good position. And then once you start missing, All you want to do is miss after that. I had a little bit of a mag issue on that one. It wasn't as bad, but again, once you run the bolt and there's no bullet there, every time you run the bolt, you're thinking, is it gonna be a click or a boom? And so we ended up timing out on that one. Um, it was a fun stage. I'd like to do it again. It was definitely something I like to do. One thing that we noticed, and Tiger didn't really talk about this, but with that high DNF rate, this was another one like the long range stage where the ROs got through it fine and the actual day of shooters struggled. And
Yeah.
so most of the people that finished it were ROs.
Yeah.
And so something about the wind, because the wind was weird on that one too, is opposite of the stage before it.
Yeah.
And so it was, I don't have any good excuse on that one. Again, just on tilt and couldn't pull my head out of my butt. But it was my wife shot great too. That was a funny thing too, because it was just like ding, ding, and then waiting for me over here, running the old bolt action, just missing away. It's
yeah, really, like Ryan said, this stage was really designed for the gun your wife was running, right? A 16-inch AR with a 1-6, or like my 10-3 with a 1-8. Anything like that was really what it was designed for, because like it just was like over precision, which is what I tend to do, right? Like I tend to carry the big bolt gun or the precision AR-10 or something, and then try to really center punch every target. Like that's not what you needed to do here. You needed to go tap, tap, move, tap, tap, move, and be stable while you were doing it.
Yeah. And that's where this is the same fence you had a stage at before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Same spot.
So it's a solid, like it's a solid fence. It's a good rest.
Yeah.
So just wind plays havoc, as you said. Getting visual patience is hard to learn, and even when you learn it, there are times where last weekend at my match, I was ripping off shots. Mark was talking about like, yeah, close enough, and you're ripping shots off, and it's like, I know better, like that really wasn't like, oh, it's kind of a big target, I'm close enough, but not really, because I just missed, and then you miss and you feel like you got to speed up because now you got to make up for this miss and the time's ticking away. And if you can't get that little, voice in your head to slow down and just, all right, get my hit, get my hit, get my hit. I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but sometimes your fastest stages, you finish up and you're like, that was kind of slow, And then they're like, are you serious? Like that's, you got the stage win on this, because all you're focused on is vision and shooting and, get that hit, get that hit, get that. And it feels slow and it's really not. You watch a video on it, you're like, oh, that seemed like I was taking a lot more time, but there's no way to miss fast enough.
Yeah. Can't miss fast enough to make up for a hit.
Nope. So you can certainly go too slow. You can hit things and go too slow.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there's an opposite side of that. I mean, there's a lot of people that can go 1 for 1 and still not have a win, but you can definitely miss really fast and you don't get anywhere. So
yeah, but if you're pushing so fast that you're not making hits, like that's no good.
Yep, exactly. So 7, we got one more headed to stage 8. What are we looking at?
So this was it was probably a mile from 7 to 8. So it was on the road, so it was good, easy hiking. And stage 8 is the zombie classic, right? It's the dreaded plate rack. And I love it because I've watched USPSA Masters just bomb this shit, and other shooters who were like, this is their first match ever, like smoke it in 25 seconds, right? Or whatever. Like it's so much more mental than it is really that hard, right? Like, and I watched several teams shoot it, and it was really funny because like one of the teams I watched shoot it was Caitlin Wheeler and Leslie Elmore. And for those of you who don't know, Caitlin Wheeler is a junior shooter. She's a Lucas Oil sponsored shooter. She's also a laser ammo sponsored shooter. and they sent her the indoor range, right? The smokeless range that they sell. So she's got a plate rack in her basement that she doesn't have to spend any money on. And watching her shoot a plate rack was like watching JJ Rakaza, right? Like it was like pop, 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 pop. Like it was just so fast. So the way the stage was set up, shooter 1, shooter 2, both in the shoot box. They each have their own individual plate rack. There's a 2/3 IPSC in the middle. The plate racks are again at 10 yards, and I was just shocked at how close 10 yards is. But I promised Mark I wouldn't put them at 15, so I put them at 10. And this year I didn't use traditional plate racks, which fall and have to be reset. I actually set them up as speed racks. I don't know if that made a difference or not. My DNF rate was about the same, so I guess not. But buzzer goes off. You both start shooting. You have to run it clean, right? Like you have to do it in a clean run. You can't miss. And if either partner missed, both partners had to hit the middle plate and then they could restart their run, right? Like, so you have to run 2 clean runs on the same run. So not only do you have to shoot well, you have to trust your partner to shoot well. It accomplished exactly what I wanted it to accomplish. People got frustrated with it. It's not hard. It goes back to you can't miss fast enough to make up for a hit. You really can't on this stage. Like you cannot miss fast. Like if you miss, you've just wasted 6 seconds at least, right? Like because that's the fastest that people are going to run a plate rack. So, but I had fun with it. Me and John shot it in like 16 seconds. We both ran it clean. And then you ended with a hit on the stop plate. That middle plate was the last hit. So there were a few different strategies to run this stage. I don't know which one Mark took. Me and John just both shot our stuff. Ignore the other shooter unless they make you reshoot. So yeah, like I said, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But surprisingly hard for people like maybe Nick Hansen or John Hutt, who's used to maybe being able to drop a shot or two, and being forced to really slow down. So
yeah, so we'd practice this. I think we talked about that in the pre-episode too. My gun range has 2 plate racks right next to each other, so we practiced shooting them together. And what we found, I think we talked about this again, my wife not shooting as much as I do is a little flinchy when someone else is just hammering away next to her. So our plan was to shoot, I just run it because I can shoot a little quicker than her. And then she'd have all the time that she needs to hit her hits. And then I hit the last thing. And so we get up there, we start shooting. I'm at like plate number 4 or 5. And all of a sudden I'm just about to squeeze the shot and I hear bang. And I pull that shot way off the plate. And I look over and she's starting her plate rack. What are we doing here? Like I just missed now. We have to reset. She's, like we're not stopping, but I'm looking at her and so now she hits us. We restart, go through, and this time I shoot them clean and she's working through hers. She misses her last target. So we go back and reset, and then we shot a clean one. But it was, our plan, we had a plan. I would shoot it, then she'd shoot it. And I flinched as soon as I heard a gunshot by me. I was just, yeah, okay. I guess you're shooting now too. She's like, they seem close. They were 10 yards. It's like, figured I'd go for it. And so the one thing though, I will say, so they were 10 yards, but they were smaller than what we'd practiced on. I think a standard plate rack is 8-inch plates. And I think these were 5 or 6.
These are 6-inch plates,
and they were diamonds, weren't they?
One set was diamonds, the other set was circles.
Right.
But my plate racks have always been 6-inch plates, always. Like even at Rock Castle, I actually because they had a plate rack where you could swap like bowling pins onto, or like I swapped to 6-inch plates. Mine have always been 6-inchers. Because I think that's what you should be able to hit at 10 yards with a pistol. Like it's only 10 yards. Like
I can, just not every time.
Right.
yeah. That's
yeah. So talking about strategy though, so Niles had a really good thing, and I think he's right about this, that on a stage where you have to hit every single one where you cannot afford to miss. It's not a plate rack. It is 6 individual steel targets. And I think that's the mental thing that you have to have. And he said it to me after the match. He didn't help me before the match, but that idea that you just need to shoot each individual target and not think of them, when you shoot a plate rack at your home range, it's how fast can I knock these down? It's a sequence of the dot's going to move onto these, and it's not that when you have to hit each one. And so I think that's a good takeaway.
And I've also seen, because you talk about it, right? You get a plate rack where it's a sequence, it's pop, 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 pop. And I've seen people do that for the first 5 and then stop and almost over aim on the 6th one and miss, right? Like, I talk about slowing down, make sure you make your hits, but you can get in your head on that and go too slow, like Ryan said, or be focusing on the dot instead of the target, or on the target instead of your front sight post, or whatever it is, right? Like, you're like, okay, I've hit 5 of these. I really need to make this last hit. Well, just make your hit. Like, you don't need to really make it. You just need to make it, right? Like, so yeah, it's looking at it as 6 individual targets. That's brilliant. Like, I've never thought of that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all on how you frame it, what you need for your, to get those hits. I know from shooting these in the past, it's very easy to over aim, and it's very easy to let it get in your head. To me, it's sometimes a plate rack. This plate rack particularly is almost like a spinner. I'll see people shoot pistol spinners. They'll be shooting other pistol targets, smaller pistol targets, leading up to it. Ping, 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 1 for 1. Then they get there, ping, 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 and they shoot and they hit the first one and they miss every other shot after that, because they get this idea that they got to rush, try, hurry, and that's not how you hit things. You can't outshoot your sights. So it's definitely a good stage for like re-emphasizing that. All right, so Mark, takeaways for you. What did you feel like went well for you, that you were happy that you guys practiced and did? Maybe is there something that you're going to look at next year, kind of work on? Any kind of takeaways that you and Kayla had?
Yeah, so like I said before the match, and I've told this to Tiger, I had a great time. I love this match. And like I said in the pre-show, I've already won. I won before we showed up, just all the training. That was so much fun. We're going to do more cardio, both of us. So she didn't have a lot of time for cardio this year, but we're going to work on that. The one thing I could tell with my rifle shooting, and we've talked about this a little bit offline, is I haven't really shot any 3-gun since COVID started, or since, pretty much since COVID started. And so just rifle position shooting, basic rifle stuff, like, nothing was tricky. Nothing was like a VTAC, bent over, weird stuff like that, but just hop down behind a barrel and shoot 5 targets. Like that should be, easy for me. And when I was in the heat of the moment, it wasn't there. It wasn't where I wanted it to be, I should say. I was fine, but just getting back into like 3-gun, so I have that pistol rifle skills that I want to have, those sort of things help. Better fitness. This was the best fitness that I've had for a match, even though our time was still super slow because we just walked the whole thing, but we weren't sucking wind. We didn't get to any stage like, no, just give us a minute here. We just had a good walk, and that's what our plan was, just to have a good walk and shoot the match. So better cardio, can't go wrong with better cardio, and then work on the rifle. Getting back into matches.
That's one of the rules of the zombie.
Right.
Rule number 1, cardio.
Right.
Rule number 1, cardio.
Right. So just those things, they're pretty general. I was happy with our training. I was happy with the pistol work we did, the dry fire, all that stuff. That paid off dividends for sure. And all the ROs were talking about my wife shooting. They were, everyone was impressed with that. And so, and practicing long range, if you get the chance, the things you learn, all those wind things you can't really find out on a 200-yard range. So you really need to make a drive, pay for another range fee, whatever you have to do to get out to longer range to figure those things out. So, but yeah, fun match. I definitely recommend. One of my friends here in town, I just sent this to Tiger, but I was telling him about it. He showed his wife and she's like, yeah, we can do that. We just have to train. And so, get out there, it doesn't have to be your wife. It could be anybody, your hunting partner or whatever. So
Yeah.
get out and give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. So
moms, dads, whatever.
yeah.
It sounds like you did a good job of making her shooting look better in comparison to yours.
Right. Yes. We talk about communication and marriages and everything, and it's really just about humbling yourself and making, like doing what you need to do to make that relationship stronger.
To make her look better. If you miss
Right.
a lot, by comparison, it's like, wow, man, she is really good.
Yes.
So I take it you guys didn't win then.
No,
You
I think
weren't-
we ended up third in Jack and Jill.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a good finish. There were some good Jack and Jill teams there.
Yeah.
So I thought you were pretty high. I remember looking at the scores. So Tiger, for you, I know as a match director, there's like, you've probably got a list of like, this worked great, this not happening again, or I need to do something different, or what. But maybe what's one or two takeaways for you from this match?
I tell you what, man, and I kind of bragged on it a little bit. This year, because it was really the first year. Like I had it in 2017, 2018. By 2019, I was really getting my legs under me at Rock Castle, and then Rock Castle goes and shuts down. It's like, well. So then I don't really know what I've got, and I switched to a team format. So 2020 is like I'm like a brand new match director all over again. 2022, I know what I have available to me. I assembled a good team of ROs. Like somebody asked me like midday Saturday, they're like, "Hey man, how's it going?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm bored. Like I'm, like I was like, I don't know what to do with myself, right? Like everything's running like." I had one team that DQ'd, and you always hate to see that. But like no targets went down. Nobody really got lost. Like I didn't have any major emergencies. I wasn't running around like a like it really just went like the way I feel that a Matt Stennett match goes for Matt Stennett, right? Like he just rides around and checks on stuff. And that's what I did. Like I just like Saturday, I literally Megan Dudley was there. She took a lot of pictures for us. You can check them out on Facebook. I was like, "Hey, Megan, just hop in. I'll run you to all the stages." She's like, "Are you sure you got time?" And I was like, "Yeah, come on, let's go." And like, it was great. I got to talk to some people that I normally don't get to talk to because I wasn't really. And I realized, and here's where the takeaway comes in: being organized and knowing what you're doing makes experiences better. It was the first year I'd ever tried it, and I'm like,
that's a life lesson.
Yeah, I'm like, holy crap! Not making it up as you go makes it better. Like, because I've always said, like, I'm the world's worst match director because people are like, what are you gonna do here? I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there, right? Like, I'm a jump in with both feet. I'm in what's the famous entrepreneur thing? Ready, fire, aim. Like that's kind of how I've man, so it was great. I put a lot of stuff, had a lot of great sponsors this year too. I was going to run down a list of them, but I just realized there was like 29 or 30 of them, and holy crap, is that a lot of people to read off. Some notables: Smoke Composites been with us from the very beginning, Thunder Beast, Proof, Bluegrass Targets. We've mentioned the other two target companies. I can't leave out Bluegrass. Literally all of the steel that wasn't provided by Crate or Innovative was Bluegrass. Guys, I got a post on Run and Gun on the Instagram page and on the Facebook page and on Run and Gun Discussion. Get on there, check these sponsors out. Primer & Co. provided some awesome shirts.
Night Force. I know Night Force had a couple
Night
pretty
Force
high
came
dollar
in.
optic.
Yeah, put some optics on. AccuFire Tech, they put some optics on. Henry sent some swag. Covenant Gunworks, brand new sponsor. They sent 2 cans and like 2,000 rounds of ammo and all. Stand One Armory, they provided a bunch of the stage gun ammo for me, and some stuff for the prize table. If you're looking for some great, they actually have a load for 5.56 that they call their run and gun 5.56 load. It's a 62 grain bullet. It's exclusively what I shoot out of my ARs. So, but yeah, like we're hoping, Ryan can make it out. And I said this in the pre-show, right? Like Mark talks about he had already won before he ever showed up because him and Caleb were better because of this match. To me, one team being better prepared, I'd already won, right? Like the whole sport of run and gun started 21 years ago now to create a better trained, more well-regulated population, right? Like you talk to the Pawnee guys, that's what they want to push. And so the fact that your friends are planning on coming, but we got to train first, right? Awesome. Like that's what it's all about. I'll touch the 5K match. I had like 15 shooters this year on the 5K. It went fantastic. I would run every match as a 5K 22 match if I could, because God, are those easy to put on. But I can't thank people enough for letting me put this on, like making it successful enough that I can continue to do this. So again, if you've hung out with us, we're going on 2 hours now. Thank you for that, first of all, and thanks for coming out. And if you haven't been to one yet, make 2023 your year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this is, I mean, it's a great match. It's always fun shooting team matches. I'm impressed no steel went down. When you talk about short action guns, you got guys out there with 308s and 6.5s, and who knows, I know the 2020 Ben
Win mag. Ben Wolf hit stuff
Ben
with
Wolf,
300 win mag.
yeah, like it.
I did take
AR-15
one steel I took one off of a stand with the 6.5, and
Yeah,
they were able to just put it back on there. But I did
yeah,
crush.
and it's hard on hangers. It's hard on hardware.
Yeah,
308 and
but
6.5 just eat up hardware.
I, as an MD, was not called to fix a target this year.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I was crushing some of those though. Like they were really moving.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's the beauty of a 6.5, right? Like, and we talk about it. The match really is designed like a 6.5 Grendel or a 6 Arc or a 224 Valkyrie, like would crush zombie. Like that's like the optimum zombie, whatever. But we killed deer this week, and John hit him with a 6.5 Grendel, and I hit it with a 6.5 Creedmoor, and the difference in the two impacts was noticeable on a live animal. I'm like, yeah, if you're shooting at steel, 6.5 Grendel is basically the same, like pretty close out to like 700 or 800 yards. Like it's pretty close to the same thing. You start shooting at live things, or you start listening for steel to really ring, that short action caliber, big plus.
yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks again for sticking with us, you guys. Again, go to the Zombies Instagram or Facebook. Check out all those sponsors. If you're looking at product to buy, check the sponsors of these matches that we all shoot. They all. I mean, I just bought a bunch of bluegrass steel for my local 3-gun match. We spent almost $900. And as a match, he gave us a really good deal. But great steel, and innovative. Jason and G makes awesome stuff. If you need reactive, or like I say reactive as in like auto poppers and kind of moving, more than just static steel, Jason and G stuff he's got some really cool product offering. Crate Tactical sells some good stuff. We've got a Crate Tactical like full size IPSC that my wife wanted a match. I mean, all these people make good products, and they sponsor our shooting sports. So do what you can to go out there. I know I said earlier I'm sponsored by Coda. Coda had prizes on his prize table.
Yeah, they had 15
that's another
hand
one.
guards on the prize table. Control Solutions had 15 muzzle brakes on this.
Yep.
Like, I feel bad not like running down the list, but like I said, I can't.
It's there. It's hard. Yeah, we don't want to take 10 minutes telling you every sponsor, but thanks for sticking with us, and hopefully we'll have another episode for you here soon.